Well, welcome to the Inviting the Confident Power of the Sovereign training. I'm so excited that everyone's here. Everyone is muted, so I'm going to record this training. Then we're going to have questions. Chances are for the live, I will turn off the recording for the questions because I want people to be able to share or ask questions that might be of a personal nature. And I don't want to record that for everyone. So there will be some great free stuff at the end. So I really hope that you'll wait because there are some cool groups and stuff that I have going on coming up once I do my move. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing that I didn't actually put a slide in here for myself and who I am. So let me just introduce myself. I'm Christina Smith, and I am an empowerment and health coach. And what that means is I really thrive on helping people find their power. They have it. I don't empower them. They empower themselves. And I've been really reflecting on, when did I get my power back? Because I know that like in my late 20s, early 30s, I really lost my power. I became a victim, I became a martyr. I, was basically getting up every day just to do this list of things that I had no passion for. I just felt like I had to. And it showed up all over my life. I became powerless. I felt kind of like a slave to my life. Like I didn't even know why I got up every day just to do the to-do list, then go back to bed. And now that I look back, there was lots of physical symptoms too. And so, more than likely I was depressed. And that's what the doctors told me. No matter what physical symptom they came in with, I was depressed. Here, take some antidepressants. And the problem was the medications didn't really help. I tried a lot of them made me worse. And it was really, really tricky. And then I started doing my own work, meaning I went to a therapist, started talking it out with her. Then I went to a weekend called the Woman Within Weekend, which I'm sure if you've heard of me before, you've heard me talk about this because I love Woman Within. And they are the ones who started having me on this path of Carl Jung and the archetypes and shadow work. And what was this all about? How was my experience and my past coming back right now to basically create this really not so great space in my life where I didn't really know why I was here. And so the more I looked into the archetypes, though, the more I found that the sovereign holds, I don't want to say the most amount of power, but she is the leader of the archetypes. He or she, it could be a king or a queen. But my empowered queen could do a lot more when I stepped into that energy. And I don't want to make it sound like, I was depressed and anxious and all of a sudden I stepped into that energy and boom, boom, it was like my whole lifestyle changes, Cinderella to becoming the princess. That's not exactly how it worked. But I started to feel more empowered. And it was a little bit by little bit that I started getting my power back, where I started seeing in my life where I was allowing my sovereign to give my power away. Sometimes I was making the wrong archetype do the job that a different archetype should have done. Sometimes my queen just wanted to do everything and didn't want, to delegate any work. So, there was a truly exhausted queen. And when my queen is empowered, I'm able to see the big picture of my life. I have this really great, I read this book called The Book of Awakenings by Mark Nepo. And just the other day, I read this really great passage that was talking about when we stub our toe, often we see the whole world from that little toe. We forget that there's a whole world of magic still happening because we have that one stub toe. And so everything's about that pain that we have in our life, where if we can step back and see all the magic that's still happening and know that stub toe is just one little piece of it, that pain becomes less, so it's what we're focusing on. So when I am in my empowered queen, I can step back from those emotional situations, because that's what we're having is an emotional response to that pain. I can step back from that emotional response and see, okay, what really is the thing that's going to serve me in the long term, rather than doing whatever it is that my rebellious adolescent wants to do right now. What is going to help me? And when I'm in my empowered queen, I can sit among other women as a queen. And when we sit among other women as queens, or men, kings among kings, we start talking from our higher power to their higher power, which means that a lot of the nonsense stuff that we argue about kind of can fall away, or at least we can negotiate it. We can really see the importance of certain things rather than of becoming that right fighter, right, or the defender. And I can make confident decisions. So I used to get to the point where I would go to the store, and because there's so many choices these days, I would look at them all and I wouldn't even be able to make a decision, and I would leave the store without the thing I needed because I couldn't make a decision about it. Like, that's how anxious I would get about stuff. And I see head shaking. So I hear that. Yes, exactly. I mean, and that's where we've gotten to these days, where we feel like, I mean, even just picking out the shampoo, like, what shampoo? It can freak me out if I'm not in my confident queen. And yet when I'm in my confident queen, I know what I can get, right? So, and I know what I'll get. And that's that whole battle that's going in my head about, well, what's the best? What's the best? I've got to find the best. And it's like, 20 years ago, we had one choice. That was the best choice. So that's what I do now. So I spread the word of power, and I hope that people will find that sovereign within them so that they can take their own power back. Stop waiting on other people to change or do things in order for us to be okay in doing that. Waiting for that goal to happen. That's the biggest thing that we do is, I'll be happy, I'll have more power when I accomplish this or when this happens. And I say, take your power back now and figure out what you can do about it now. So that's that. Let's move on. I always like to start with a quote. So welcome. Since we're talking about Carl Jung and the archetypes, I loved this quote when I found it. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And that's really what the archetypes are about. They're more about discovering who you are and how you use the energy that you have. Are you using it from a good place, or are you using it from a place that you're not even aware of, that you might be unconscious of? And our conscious queen is phenomenal. And we're going to talk about her or him, the sovereign, in just a second. But today we're going to talk about what the archetypes are, why we benefit from our inner sovereign, the powers of the sovereign archetype. Two S's there. The grammar is throwing me off. The light and the dark of the sovereign, how to craft our best sovereign, becoming our best self, and improving relationships with the sovereign. So there's going to be a lot that we're going to cover. So let's get right into it. So in the free training that I had about the archetypes, which I know a lot of people have taken, we went overview, how do you use the archetypes? What are the archetypes? I gave you these 20 examples of the archetypes, and we talked about how you could kind of step into that. If you want to get to that training, you can just go to invitingshift.com, and then there's a login at the top. And when you log in there or create an account from there, you can get to the classroom, and it's right there in a 3-part training. So we're going to talk about this sovereign today. And like I said, the sovereign is the leader, is the one who can manage all of the other subjects in the queendom or the kingdom. So that's why I really think that this one is one of the most essential to start with. So why the sovereign? The sovereign solves all of these problems because he or she is the one who can kind of negotiate and have those difficult conversations, even amongst your archetypes or amongst you and other people. She can see, what is it that this person needs? What is it that I need? And how can we best make that happen without all of the ego stuff getting in the way? Oh yeah, if you've ever gotten emotionally charged and maybe done something you might have regretted later, that was because your queen had no power at that moment. Maybe your warrior took over, maybe that rebellious adolescent took over and did something that we're now regretting. When we have our sovereign in place, and a strong sovereign that sovereign energy can balance our emotions versus consequences. Anxious about making decisions, I just talked about that. The sovereign is good at making decisions, especially what, we might judge as ridiculous decisions like shampoo. She's got no problem. She just picks the one that she likes. She doesn't worry about price or, anything else. She's just like, that's the one I like. That's what I'm getting. When we're exhausted from life, it's often because we've given up the power of our passion and vision, and that's something that she is really focused on, or he. And then feeling stressed, that's when the power is not being managed properly, or you've given up your power and there's no leader, and all the archetypes are just having a field day, telling you all kinds of different stories, and no one's there to negotiate or communicate it. So that's why we like the sovereign, because the sovereign, he or she can do so much for us. So what does it feel like to be royal? There's a free training out there too, or a visualization that I created about the Queen, that I will link with this wherever this is, that will take you through. It's about 13 minutes long. It'll take you through a little visualization of how to step into that sovereign energy. So I suggest you take that maybe after this. But when I asked women specifically, and not because I was excluding men, just because the women answered, what does a queen feel like, right? I got these answers: grace, power, wisdom. She's blessed. She's blessing, abundant, honored, admired, cherished, supported, seen, heard. So all of these really great words. So it all depends. Your sovereign can look however your sovereign looks, act however your sovereign acts. Every archetype for each person is going to be slightly different. My sovereign's not going to look like your sovereign or necessarily act like your sovereign. So we just want to keep that in mind, that there's no right sovereign. There's a feeling and an emotion that comes with it, when you feel in line with, oh, that is my sovereign, and you'll know it when you feel it. So take that visualization, because I think that'll help. And then what I want you to know is that we all have this access to a strong, powerful sovereign. And I've told this to some of my clients, and they say, no, I don't think so. I think she's abdicated. I'm not sure what happened, but she's not here. Like, there is no sovereign within me. And I promise there is a sovereign within you. If we've never experienced her, or if we have put her away or him away for a long time, that happens because when we're young, sometimes when we're too much of a leader, let's say, especially women, if we're too much of a leader, we're told that we're bossy, or, that we want to tell everybody what to do, or that we just want things our way. And it's like, yeah, because I'm royal, like things should be my way, and that's natural. We teach people to conform so that we can live in society, but there are ways where we can have our strong, powerful sovereign come out and not be trampling on anybody else's sovereign. It's not about having more power than others. It's about living to your highest power so others are inspired to live to their highest power. And that's really what it's about. So how the sovereign archetype can help us. There's some really key functions of the sovereign archetype. She is all about this abundant power. She knows her power. She knows her worth. She feels her power. She can change things whenever she needs to change things. She has, so she's also the wise leader. That can kind of delegate and knows which one of her subjects are best at different things. Like the warrior is really great at protection and boundaries. The lover is going to be really great at communication and really nurturing people. And that's what the wise leader does. And then she has this keen vision. So she's the visionary. She can see the big picture, what it is that would best serve us in the long run, how to manage it, how to get it done. She's that action taker. She may not actually go out and protect the boundaries, but she's going to ensure that, somebody is managing that underneath her. like the warrior. And then, you know, the sovereign will seek support. So they have this whole subject, all these subjects, this whole kingdom or queendom of subjects, and they are waiting to support that sovereign. So she doesn't have to do everything herself. And then one thing I want to go over before we go into the 3 ways that we can kind of step into the sovereign is that there's a light and a shadow sovereign. Some people call it a light and a dark. The shadow is where we hide these qualities that we do that we may not be conscious of or we don't want to be conscious of. So the light and the dark, when I've been talking about the sovereign, I'm talking about the sovereign that is in the light, the one that we can see. That's the one I want to be. The more ideal sovereign, the balanced sovereign. The shadow is all the ways that we use that archetype that is kind of in a shady, dark area where if we actually admitted it to ourselves, it may not be something that we actually want to use, that we could probably do things in a different way. So let's look at them really quick. So the light sovereign is going to be the visionary. It's going to be the blessed, the one who can receive and give blessings. They have benevolent leadership. They're looking for the best of the kingdom. They're not looking for just the best of themselves. They delegate with all in mind. So they make sure that the right people are doing the right support, or the right energies are doing the right support. They have a clear sense of responsibility. So they understand that all of this they are responsible for, and they are okay with that. And they're loving and fair, which I think is one of the most essential qualities, is that, you know, they listen to all of their subjects. They don't just make a ruling. They listen, they try to understand, they try to be fair. Whereas this shadow sovereign is kind of the opposite. They're a tyrant. They can just, you know, it's all about me. You just have to do this. There's no asking. There's just orders. They could be greedy. They could be vengeful, demanding, power focused. It's all about them and their wealth and their power. And they can push off responsibility. So often this is the one who can also use force to get what they want, rather than being that benevolent leader that can kind of negotiate the things. So there's certain aspects of the sovereign that we also want to look out for. You know, we don't want to overdo our sovereign and pull things out of the shadow without looking at the actions and the words that we're taking. Did I go backwards? Okay, so the 3 fundamentals of the sovereign. We're going to start. So these are the action pieces, because I like to get to action. So now that we kind of understand the sovereign, you know, they're all archetypes that we've seen in literature too, so we can kind of relate to them. So the first thing is about the sovereign is that they have a clear sense of self and outer vision. So they don't just see what we read before with Carl Jung, the dream. They also go inside to awake. So they know who they are. They know they're not a martyr. They're not a victim. They can't fall into those areas because they have more power than anyone else. So that would be, you know, silly or degrading to the people in their kingdom that don't have as much power. They don't need to talk about other people because, you know, they're really awesome and they are really clear on who they are. The other thing is if we look back at other, like, at royal lineage, like in England where there's a queen, Queen Elizabeth doesn't rule like her father did, and her father doesn't rule like his brother did or like their father did. They're all very different. That's why we love the stories of the queens and the kings, because they all had these like seedy little things that were wrong with them too, and it's very romantical to like really hear about the kind of ruler that they were. So each sovereign, although they are clear on who they are different. They don't rule like everybody else. So even though they have the outer vision of what they see, they don't take that in and say, I need to craft myself like that. They have a clear sense of who they are, and that's in a clear alignment with what's going on outside of them. And then, so for example, some of the exercises we can do is the clear sense of self. For me, that really comes from my wise elder. When I'm feeling over emotional, anxious, depressed, that's usually because I have some kind of fear about myself. My anxiety, I know for me, comes from not trusting myself enough to make really good decisions, or fearing that I'm going to make a bad decision, or that I'm not enough. You know, that lots of people have this message, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, all of those things. So if I can connect with that wise elder inside me, she or he, for me, it's a she, can really answer me, you know, who am I? So in my mind, I do a whole visualization where I have my sovereign and my crone, they get together, they have a conversation, and I have my crone remind me, who am I? Because from that wise elder part of myself, I can't bring in, I have a hard time bringing in that inner critic too, because in my mind, my crone's come to love me so much that she's not going to allow all that nonsense talk. She's just only going to talk truth. So when we need truth about ourselves, our wise elder or our crone is the place to go. The second one that you might want to try is, you know, get really clear on who you are and what you want to see in your life. And this is where I think I want to, yeah, I'm going to talk about this, even if this is in a later slide, because I didn't review too much. So CDFs, Danielle Laporte has this really great book called The Desire Map. And the way I got really, really clear on what I wanted wasn't with vision boards. I love vision boards. I love me a vision board. But that's not how I did it, because having pictures of things that I wanted or words that I wanted wasn't really working for me, because I'm not a big things person. So I always got to the point where I was like, well, the things I want, I don't know how to put in pictures. So Danielle Laporte does this whole process of finding what she calls your core desired feelings, CDFs. And those are the feelings that you really, really want to feel underneath. Like all of those things that are on your vision board, the reason you want those things is to have X, Y, and Z feelings. So whatever those X, Y, and Z feelings are, that's really your goal. That stuff there are byproducts of having that feeling. So, you know, she says that the feeling needs to come before the things, because even if you get those things, we all know when we've achieved a goal, and yet that's not enough, right? We've already created another goal. We need to do something different, or maybe it made us feel good for a minute, and then we're like, okay, so what's next? So instead of that, if we go for the goal of the actual feelings, all that other stuff becomes bonus. I mean, still can be your goal, but if we make the feeling the goal, we can step into that feeling at any time we choose to. So in that way, I really learned who I was and what was really, truly important to me. So, I mean, my core desire feelings change all the time. I usually do like an annual look at what it is that I'm actually wanting to feel, because they become clearer as we go. And so, you know, if you're going to do this, I would suggest getting the desire map. And if you're not going to get the desire map, just make sure that whatever your feelings are, don't put happy as one of them, because that is so general. Like what is happy? Like, tell me what happy is. Those are your words, because happy for you, happy for my dog, happy for me, all different things. They all feel different. So how do we actually want to feel in our body? What are those feelings? And then you're going to find out who you are, because that's getting down to those feelings really show us, you know, what's important, what really lights us up. That's who we are, those things. And then we can bring those things into our life all the time. So see somebody getting on a notebook, the desire map, Danielle Laporte. It's really a fabulous book, and it really helped me get really clear on who I was. So those are my two exercises or advice to give you for really finding that clear sense of who you are. And then number two, the second fundamental is that they feel worthy of the crown. And we might think that that's really, truly easy because we're like, well, of course they do. They've been born into royalty, sovereigns, you know, they're going to feel that. And that doesn't mean that we can't feel that, right? So Cinderella went from, you know, from being a maid basically to becoming a princess. She had to learn how to feel worthy of that crown, because I know the story stops with they lived happily ever after, but I always imagined that there was tons of women in the kingdom that were a little irked by this and were very jealous. Cinderella had to put up with all their nonsense, and she had to start questioning, you know, what if I'm not worthy? You know, I think this is how it would work today. She would start questioning, what if I'm not worthy? Like, I don't know. I was, you know, whatever. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Meghan Markle feels that way, or, you know, any of the women who marry into the royalty, but they have to feel worthy of who they are. And that is one of the core wounds for so many women. Am I worthy? Am I enough? And the royal knows that. They have no choice. They got lots of people around them telling them that they are too, but they have to actually feel that and step into that. And when you look at Queen Elizabeth, I mean, she is royal. She's a tiny little woman, but she, like, you stand around her and people are just like, woo. And it's not just because they were told to. She has that presence, that very strong presence, that she knows her worth and she knows who she is. So, and they're connected to themselves. So sovereigns in the light, they're so connected to their thoughts, their feelings, the other archetypes, and their vision, that they are very grounded in their worth. So let's look at what we can do to be grounded in our worth. So here was where we were going to talk about the CDFs. What can you do to feel how you want to feel? So now that you've discovered those core desired feelings, now what can you do to feel that way? So for one of mine was like freedom, right? So freedom was once one of my core desired feelings. I wanted to feel free. And so for me, I go back to basics, like my inner child. Okay, inner child, how do you feel free? Well, she goes to swings and she starts swinging really high because it just feels so freeing, like a bird, right? So that's what she wants to do. So I can go do that to feel a little bit of freedom. And it's not necessarily the freedom in the area that you want. If that part's not moving, sometimes we have parts of our life that kind of feel blocked or stuck. But sometimes if we wiggle that stuff around in all the other areas where we can bring in some of that freedom into the other areas, it'll start bleeding and that'll start moving, and you'll be able to see other solutions or answers to that one area of your life. So however you want to feel, go do something that makes you feel that way now. Don't wait until, you know, you graduate college or you get that promotion or whatever. Just go feel that way now, and then that other stuff that was supposed to bring that feeling will just feel like a bonus, because all you really wanted was the feeling. So whatever it is, go get 2 minutes of that feeling now, so that you can make sure that you're putting it into your body and really solidifying it in there. And then the second one is to use your mother archetype energy to nurture and care for you. So for me, when I am depressed or anxious, it can be hard for me to want to go talk to people. Now I still have support. I have a circle that I visit regularly, and however, in that moment when, you know, maybe you don't want to call somebody at 3 a.m. when you're having a anxiety crises, your mother archetype is a great archetype to come in and pull in. And, you know, sometimes we don't know what we want or where it's coming from, which is understandable when we're feeling anxious. So I'll do a little visualization in my head of my mother archetype sitting down with the entire council, right? Anybody who's got something up, and she can talk to the child. Okay, so what's going on with you? Are you anxious right now? What's going on? How can I help you? And then the child can talk, ask for what they want. maybe it's just a hug. Maybe that child just needs, it's safe. It's okay. We're okay. We're safe, because often our anxiety is much higher than it needs to be in the moment that we're there, not being chased by coyotes or anything. So the mother energy can calm each one of those archetypes. Sometimes our warrior even needs a little nurturing. Warrior, what's wrong with you? Well, I'm getting mad because somebody's crossing my boundaries and I just want to explode. Okay, well, let's look at that. What can we actually do about that? What do we need to do about that? Okay, great. And now how can I comfort you? Because the rest is going to be fine. This is not life or death. So your mother can come in and give that tough love, not necessarily let you out of doing the hard thing, but we know mothers, they make you do the hard thing if that's what you're supposed to be doing, and they love you anyway. So bring in your mother energy, and then you can get those hard things done, because this comes up for me a lot when I'm doing new things that seem like they're scary, or it's just that they're new, and so I wonder, what's going to happen, and I get all anxious. And so my mother archetype can come in and love me and nurture me and say, yeah, and it's okay, you're going to be fine. And so that's one way that you can step into that energy. Even queens and kings have mothers that come nurture them. And then the third huge thing that I think that the fundamentals of being a sovereign is not just knowing your place, knowing your worth, but it's also how we communicate and how we're in relationship with others. Because without the relationship of others, queens and kings would not be able to run a kingdom. That's for sure. We know that when a king or a queen gets the respect for them gets lost, they have to use force. They have to use threats in order to get people to work with them. And that's coming from that shadow side. We want to really get along with people, really hear people, be fair, and be in relationship with each other. And especially you have to think about relationships, let's say like Queen Elizabeth and Philip, right? Her husband, he's not a king. And yet she's a queen, and they have to learn how to have a relationship, even though the power structure may be different or whatever features in their relationship are different. So again, relationships aren't about intimate relationships aren't about queen and then her husband, right? Those are still two people. So the sovereign's got to learn how to communicate on many different levels, not just as the leader or a visionary or an action taker, but she's also got to learn how to have those close, intimate relationships with other higher powers, right? Because when she's coming from that area, I'm hoping the queen is trying to talk to the highest part of that other person. So just having a title doesn't make you a sovereign. It's acting from that title that I think is really important here. And relationships are a balance of love and boundaries. So often people think, I love that person, and they're doing this thing that's really, really not healthy for me or hurting me or whatever, but I don't want to tell them because, I want them to be able to love me. And one thing I want to tell you that sovereigns are really, really great at, when we draw really good, clean boundaries, people love us more. I know, doesn't sound right. You're like, but isn't it great when there's just like a flow of love? And there is a flow. However, we all have to keep ourselves safe. We all need our own safe space. And there's certain things that won't work for us. Like my husband cheating on me. That's a boundary because he made a commitment that said that he would not do such a thing. And without having any further negotiation, there is just, boundary. So it doesn't mean that we're not in love and he's not wanting to cross that because he loves me. However, in some relationships, when we have less strong or clear boundaries, like let's say you have somebody in your life who just says negative things all the time and you're like, oh, it just drives me nuts. It really ruins my energy. I can't handle it. So you say, could you let me know when you're going to talk about negative things? Or if you're being too negative, I might have to say this to keep myself safe and my energy safe. And we have to do that sometimes rather than enduring all of that negative energy. I mean, it could go on for years, and then you could start hating that person and not wanting to hang out with them. And now you've disconnected this relationship, all because you couldn't ask for what you wanted. So sovereigns can ask for what they want. They can make really clear boundaries, but with love. And it's just like you think about your children, or especially adolescents, right? They want to know where their boundaries are. What do you mean I need to be home by midnight for curfew? Do you mean 12:30? What happens if I show up at 12:30? Then what? You know, and they make all these, like, they just got to step on the line. They want to know where it is. And it's not because they want to cross way over it. They just want to know where it is. Like, where are my limits? Like, when do I start getting in trouble for this? Like, and that's natural. That's natural as human beings. That's what we do. Often we do that in relationship with other people when we want them to tell us where their boundaries are, right? We don't do, it's from the shady side. It's from that shadow side, right? Where we're just like, okay, well, if I scream at this person and they don't do anything, I wonder what happens when I scream at them when I'm closer, or when I start throwing things, or, you know, like, and that's kind of how we get into a landslide of allowing people to treat us in ways that we don't like. So being in relationship with others is definitely one of the key qualities of the sovereign, that they're able to do that. So if you're having struggles with relationships, what I always say is, for me, the trifecta for relationships in my life, is the lover, warrior, and sovereign. Sometimes I also need to bring in that crone for the elder kind of wisdom. But usually to figure out what's going on and how I'm feeling about something, those three archetypes together work really well. The lover wants to love, wants to be present, wants to hear what the other person has to say or try to understand, be compassionate. The warrior is really great at going, okay, this is my boundary because I need to be safe. So between the lover and the warrior, there's, you know, sometimes an argument over where that boundary should be, right? And then there's the sovereign there to have that conversation, to negotiate between the three of them. Okay, so, you know, this person's doing this thing that we've asked them not to do, and they're still doing it. How do we draw a stronger boundary while still being in connection with them? You know, how can I talk to them in a way where they'll understand and not necessarily take it offensively, where they'll still be in connection with me? Because that's really the idea, because sovereigns don't burn bridges. They need all the people. And if they don't need them now, they may need them later. So they don't try to burn bridges on purpose. They hold being fair and strong, but they also don't intentionally burn bridges just because. So having that visualized conversation, especially when you know you're going to have a hard conversation with somebody, if you can imagine, you know, what are the three stances there between your lover, warrior, and sovereign? What is the best negotiation between the three of those? Whew. And then exercise 2 is a huge one for me. It's come up lately for me. Intent versus impact. So these are two different things. Our intent is why we did something. The impact is, you know, what happened to me or other people because of this thing that I, you know, did. Two different things. So we could have the intention to buy somebody a really great gift. Maybe somebody buys you a pair of leather boots, doesn't realize you're a vegan, you know, and so the impact obviously is like, that person's like, oh, I'm not going to wear these, they're leather. And the person who bought it is like, but they were so nice, I thought you'd really like it, you know. So obviously it wasn't the intent of the buyer to give the receiver something that he or she wouldn't like. And the impact on the receiver is different. And they may even tell their own stories about it, right? They might tell themselves, this person doesn't care about me. They don't know that I'm vegan, or that, you know, I wouldn't wear leather shoes, or, you know, I don't know. They could be telling themselves all kinds of stories, even though that wasn't the intent of the person. The person had this great intent. So that's two things. Now, in that situation, it doesn't mean that either one of them are wrong. So that's where we've come to in this country and in this world. It feels like sometimes that if my perspective is right and it doesn't agree with your perspective, that one of us is wrong. And that doesn't necessarily add up. So again, the intent was good. The impact was not necessarily great. Doesn't mean it was a bad idea. The only time it becomes a bad idea is when that person had the negative intent. You know, if this person thought, oh, I'm going to really make this friend of mine mad and spend all this money on leather boots, you know, like, then that would be bad. But at the same time, that person who did the buying can completely own their responsibility. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot about that. Didn't even think about it. I am so sorry. I'll take them back. Or, you know, here's the receipt. You take them back. Whatever you want to do with them. You know, what act of service can I do to make up for this? Because that wasn't my intention. That's all it takes. And not even necessarily having to do that act of service, just owning your responsibility. When we own responsibility in relationships, we can trust each other more. I would rather have a friend tell me, oh my goodness, I completely messed up, didn't even think about that, rather than, well, you know, if you didn't have all these silly ideas or beliefs, then you would just wear the boots, you know, like, that happens. I mean, it sounds like a silly thing, but like, these are the types of things that happen in real relationships. If you wouldn't have, then and instead of all of that, we can just say, wow, so my intent was this. I'm really sorry. I own that I didn't even think about that. That's it. You know, how many relationships could still be in connection if people could just own that piece? It doesn't mean that the other person hasn't done terrible things to you, but all we can do is own our own actions. And by owning that responsibility in a relationship, even if it wasn't your intent, even if it still was the best decision overall for everyone else, it's still okay to say, yeah, I'm responsible for that. I'm sorry it had that impact on you. That's it. Seems completely simple, but when in doubt, go with that one. So again, all of these things are about tuning in and practicing, right? Sitting with your archetypes, really having those conversations, especially when we're anxious. And for me, I know I have a lot of voices going on, a lot of stories going on that are kind of fighting with each other. So when I can sit down with my archetypes and I can sit in that queen space, I can hear each one of them and what their stories and struggles and challenges are, and really hear what they want underneath it, rather than all of those negative messages that I can start telling myself. I can quickly fall into that. But if we know who we are, what we're worth, and we can be in good relationship with other people, I mean, our lives are pretty much golden, because that's going to hit every aspect of our life, our family, our health, our work, whatever it is that we do. It's going to impact all of that. So I always say to tune in and practice. And of course, I just wanted to offer a couple of things. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can mute this. I'm going to cough. Thank you. I'm waiting to do that. So a free consult, I'm always happy to talk to anybody. So there will be links around, and I'll talk to the people that are on live in just a second. And then there's the Sovereign Circle. This is going to be a new thing that's going to start in May. So if you've been in a women's circle, it's going to be, or a men's group, it's going to be similar to that. Although we'll have a couple of lessons, let's say, thinkables, actionables that you can do every month, and we'll have a little talk about that. And then we'll also, you know, talk about what's happening in our life and how we can use the archetypes and our sovereign power to really tap in and move forward in some situations that we might need. So it's basically a group coaching, but it's going to be free for now because I just want to run it and give women, men their power back, and I'm hoping that people will join me. So I'll give you links. I'll be sending links out for all of this too. And then the last is just a coaching program. So the personal archetype journey, I think it's actually more than that, but but the $377 price is right until April too. So if you would want to get into coaching with me, let's have a conversation and let's do it. There's links around for that too. So I'm going to go into questions. So I'm going to stop the recording, but if you have any questions and you're listening to the recording, just email me. It's Christina with a CH at invitingshift.com, and I'll answer you right back, and we'll set up time to talk. Thank you so much for joining us.